classes that are really specific to your major. So I started my engineering classes freshman and sophomore year, but junior year was really where I was in my aerospace engineering classes and where I was in my astro classes. So this is hopefully where you're gonna kind of get those classes where you just feel so excited to be learning. Those classes where it's what you were thinking of when you applied to the college, or what you were thinking of when you originally said, like, oh, I want to do aerospace engineering. Hopefully you're settling into the school community, so be going out for leadership roles. It's also really good to try and participate in the community surrounding the school as well, just to kind of help you feel more at home. I loved going to farmers markets and things like that. Volunteering is always great as well, just to kind of help you feel, like you're not just there for a few months out of every year. Also, it's a great time to start considering your senior projects. So my school had this project called a Capstone project, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but it was basically the last year of my schooling. So in my senior year, I took 12 credits over 2 semesters. That was all based on one project. So a lot of schools will kind of let you pick that project if they have a capstone project, or sometimes there's different ways of doing it, but just start considering what you might want to do. Consider going to any final presentations for capstone projects that you can. I love going to my friends' capstone presentations. It also helps kind of inspire you for the future to kind of start looking at what you might want to work on. Also, especially junior year, make sure that you're checking in with your academic advisor so that you don't get to your senior year and apply for graduation and realize, oh shoot, I missed this one math class that I didn't realize that I had to take, or, realize, oh darn, that class didn't actually transfer in. Let me, I guess, try and take this over summer. Senior year is definitely exciting. You get to apply the topics that you've studied through your capstone. It's basically just this big culminating project that is going to be your really first engineering project that you do all by yourself. And I know a lot of schools do it. Some schools have it as like a slightly smaller project. Some schools it's a slightly bigger project, but it's definitely, kind of like a rite of passage. You also get to leave your mark on campus. This is the time a lot of seniors are in some sort of leadership. They're able to, kind of help shape how organizations are working. My tip is definitely just make sure you're seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. I won't lie. Senior year can be a little bit rough. It can be a little bit hard to keep going. Senioritis is real in college as well. I remember I had some senioritis in high school. But you just got to make sure you're powering through, make sure you keep your keep your head down, keep working. And at that point, you're so close, you just got to keep going. So it's also really important in college to make sure that you are practicing self-care, so that you don't drive yourself absolutely insane in a new place, learning new things with new routines. So I have my, top 3 tips here. The first one is to set a routine. So I love to schedule out my weeks. I usually sit down on a Sunday and I actually schedule my weeks hour by hour. Make sure that you're leaving yourself enough time for homework and studying in your daily and weekly itinerary. A good estimate is 3 hours out of class for every 1 hour in class. It sounds like a lot, I know, but you're probably going to be in class for less time than you are in high school. I would sometimes only take 3 or 4 classes, so I'd only actually have, maybe 9 to 12 hours a week in class. So you take the time in between those classes to go to the library, a little bit of time after classes, maybe before your organizations meet, to go to classes, to go sit in the library, work on your homework, review your notes, things like that. And if you're able to keep up, 3 hours for every 1 hour in class, plus or minus maybe an hour. It's going to help with, not having to cram for tests, not having to feel like you're behind whenever you have a quiz coming up. So it's really good practice to just make sure that you are reviewing as you go rather than, letting things slip out of your mind and then trying to push them all back all at the same time. My second tip is take breaks during the day. Take time to go offline, especially right now when so much school is, on laptops, especially if you have classes on Zoom. Make sure that you're taking time to step away from your computer, let your brain have a break, and make sure you're doing things that aren't related to your classes as well. I think that scheduling breaks is just as important as scheduling study time and scheduling time for your work. It really just gives you kind of an excuse to step away. There was definitely times where, I'd be studying for a final and I would feel like guilty getting up and walking away, but you should never feel that way. Honestly, if you take time to, go on a walk, go do something else, it will help you remember what you're trying to study. I promise it is just as important as studying. So just make sure that you're taking time for yourself. It will definitely pay off. It may not feel like it sometimes, but it will absolutely pay off. My third tip is practice mindfulness and take time for mentally relaxing activities as well as activities that stimulate your creativity. I think you should try yoga, meditation, and walks in nature. A lot of schools will kind of offer services to help you with that. Sometimes they'll have yoga classes on campus, or I know that my school did like meditation times during finals week. So if your school offers any of that, at least try it out. If you end up not liking it, that's fine. Or, set a time to go on a hike with friends. It's definitely very rewarding. It's going to help out a lot when you're feeling stressed to just have, a reason to get out of your dorm or get out of your house. Even when you feel like you should be studying, just take a moment to step away, take a few deep breaths. Remember that everything is going to be fine. So this is a quick overview of my capstone, a very quick overview, but it's basically a culmination of what I learned over the last 4 years. So this is a system that we called Prudentia. It is on an air-bearing table. So if you see that sort of green column on the bottom, it has pressurized air that's being sent out through jets on that silver table right there. So that ball isn't actually touching the table. It's as close to frictionless as we can get it. So it's able to rotate freely. I have a video that'll play in just a moment. But if you see the can you guys see my mouse? Can I point here? Okay, so these wheels over here, that is called an attitude reaction wheel. This is an attitude reaction wheel system. So these are oriented around our axis. So our axis that runs through the center of the ball, they are kind of angled around that axis so that when they spin, they have a momentum vector that will actually push the entire system. So we have a code that's running in the system that we're able to put a coordinate that we want the system to point at. Then it will figure out how much the wheels need to spin and how much each wheel needs to spin individually, and it will point at the coordinate that we ask it to. So here's a video of it doing that. So this first bit is us telling it to hold still. Then we input a coordinate and it starts spinning by itself. And it should stop, I believe, at about 90 degrees from where it originally started. So just about there. So this was a really exciting project. It definitely still has some, distance to go. There was some issues that we had specifically, you know, it's a momentum wheel, right? You're applying a momentum, so the system is changing in that momentum. But an issue that we came into was the motors saturating, which basically means that the motors would go as fast as they could, and then the system can't have any more momentum added. So, you know, there's still some things to be worked out, but it worked out pretty well. And I think for, you know, 7 people working on that for about a year, um, not too bad. We were pretty proud of it. So, I thought I'd add this in. I was actually inducted into the Order of the Engineer right when I graduated, which was very exciting. It's an engineering ethics society. So I have a ring that I thought was really exciting and I wanted to add it in. But they're saying is that we are upholding devotion to the standards and dignity of the engineering profession. So I can give you guys the little story of how the order was founded. Basically, in Canada, in I believe the 40s, there was this bridge that collapsed under its own weight and actually killed 75 people who were working on it at the time. It was an issue that the engineers hadn't caught. So they melted down the beams that had broken and made rings for themselves so that every time they signed a document, they would wear it on the pinky of their dominant hand, and they would hear it on the table to remind them of what happens when they aren't honest or when they don't actually check their work. So now, at least at my school, a lot of the engineers, we join the society and we get to wear rings that remind us, you know, just to be mindful every time we say that we're doing something or every time that we say that we're checking our work to actually do it, and to actually, you know, put your whole mind into what you're doing, because, you know, I think sometimes you have to be reminded that as an engineer, sometimes I'll be working on something that I never actually see implemented, but I have to remember that the work that I'm doing is important and will affect somebody's life. So I think a lot of times their STEM feels very removed from people. So it's always important to remember that there are still, you know, ethics associated, even when you think that, you know, it's not going to be affecting things or it's not that close to someone. You always just have to remember, you know, how important the work that you're doing is, and that no matter what it is, it might end up affecting someone. So you just have to be, you know, honest with it. So what's next for me? Next year, I'm going to graduate school. I'm going to be studying systems engineering at the Florida Institute of Technology. After that, I hope to work in industry. I want to join aerospace engineering as a systems engineer. So hopefully my goal is to work on risk management and failure analysis in spacecraft. And then I really want to become a professor. I never thought that I wanted to be a teacher, but you know, after having some really incredible professors and after really, you know, falling in love with systems engineering, I really want to help other people fall in love with systems engineering and understand how important the subject is as well. So that's everything that I have. I thought I'd open it up for some questions from you guys.
The machine, I guess, that you showed us, what would that be used for exactly?
Yes, so it's called an attitude reaction wheel system. And it is sort of a scaled down version of a steering system that you might see in a spacecraft. So I believe that it's been used in about 2 spacecraft so far, but basically it's supposed to be a low energy version of kind of what you might see in movies where they're using propulsion. If you've ever seen in movies where it's like outside of the spacecraft or something and it has the where it's like putting out some sort of gas, I guess. That needs a lot of storage, right? Because you have to have what you think you'll need, and then you also have to have that multiplied by usually a 1.5 factor of safety. So if I think I'm going to need 5 kilograms of fuel, I actually need more like 7.5 kilograms of fuel just in case something bad happens, and then maybe more than that depending on, you know, how risky the maneuver is, what I think I'm going to be doing. But with this system, you don't need to carry any fuel. So you don't have, you know, these big expendable tanks that you're going to be carrying around and then never using again. All you need is something for power. So you'll probably have probably using sun for power, probably have some sort of solar array. And then you just need these attitude reaction wheels. So something that's relatively heavy, but it is, you know, small. So once it's in space, it's not taking up a lot of space on your craft. Um, and as long as you can rotate them, you should be able to turn the spacecraft.
Bria, so I need to I need to let people go if they want to. So thank you very, very much for your time. I do have one more a student here with another question for you,
Yes.
but I do want to thank you. Let everyone have the opportunity to thank you and dismiss the students who need to leave to get a move on. I know some people have to get to work, so I'm gonna let them go. Everyone, please say thank you to Bria.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys for coming. If you have to go.
Thank you for the presentation.
Of course, thank you.
And then I have a student here who wanted to learn more about Embry Riddle.
Oh, okay.
If you can talk a little bit about the selectivity, what else you study there? Is it just for aeronautical engineering, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Of course. So I really love this school. I worked with our admissions department, so I can probably answer most of the questions that you have. Aeronautical, so engineering is probably about half of the students we have on campus. My campus, which was in Arizona, has a little under 3,000 students. And then there's a campus in Daytona Beach that has, I believe, a little bit under 8,000 students. So engineering is definitely one of the more popular majors on our campus, but it's an aeronautical university. So we have a lot of people studying to be pilots. We have a College of Security Intelligence, which is, I think, super exciting. So basically, that's anyone who wants to work in forensics. Anyone, if you want to like be a spy, or if you want to work with the FBI, CIA, NSA, they call them the 3-letter agencies. Because a lot of times when you're recruited to a 3-letter agency, you're not allowed to say which one. So if you know if you want to work for one of them, we have a really great program. Some crazy professors. It's definitely really interesting hearing some of their background. I So you said selectivity. It's definitely not a super selective school, which is surprising because it has a really good reputation in all of the industries that it works for. I know that a lot of times in high school, I thought that selectivity was, directly proportional to how respected the school was. But at least the experience that I've had at Embry-Riddle is that it's really well known in industry and it's really well respected. I believe we're sitting at about a 75% acceptance rate. So I think usually if you're interested in it and you're interested in the subjects, you'll probably get in, especially if you have, good interaction with the admissions people. So I definitely recommend that you at least reach out to them. It's a great school. Anything else specific that they want to know about?
I think that answered his questions. We were just kind of side talking while you were explaining about that stuff. I was saying, you're saying it's not a super selective school, but at the same time, Bria took AP Physics. She was a straight A student. She was involved in a ton of outside extracurriculars, including starring in many productions on campus. Doing lots of community service.
I was in too many things though.
So, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go after it. You should always look into it and apply. But
yes, definitely do. You can reach out to their admissions. They're honestly super great. I've always had a good, relationship with them. But they should be able to give you kind of a good idea of if there are like anything that you might want to show. If you are nervous about not getting in, they are test score optional, which might be nice if you're nervous about testing. I know that I was never a great test taker, so that's really nice. I don't believe that they have a required essay as well, so those are some good things to take in, but those are both also things that if you're, worried about getting in, you can add if you think they'll help you look better.
Does anyone have any other questions for Bria?
I do.
Oh, Naomi, go ahead. You have to go to work. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. It's about college workload, and if you could speak a little bit about how you balanced your major and your minor. Like, did you notice a big difference in workload when you added your minor?
I didn't, and I think that was at least partially because my major overlapped really well with my minor. So when you're looking at majors and minors, it's always good to talk to your academic advisor about, any classes that may cross over well between majors or any minors that they recommend that you take. Because, instead of having to take 6 new classes, I only had to take 3, which made things a lot easier. I also recommend that you take on as many classes as you're comfortable with your freshman year, because a lot of times your sophomore and junior year, you'll have the tougher classes and they just also happen to be usually at the same time. So if you're able to pull forward even 1 or 2 classes so that you're taking, 4 classes instead of 3 or 5 instead of 4, you'll usually have some of your easier classes freshman year. So if you just, add maybe 1 to each semester, that will definitely help you later on.
Did you AP out of a lot of classes?
I AP'd out of, I think, 2. Just because I took AP Lit and Lang and they only accepted 1. And then I didn't end up AP out of Calc because I was nervous about jumping to Calc 2. I should have, but I didn't. And then my AP History, I didn't end up having to take another history class, so I just didn't need it.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, I have another question for you.
Yes.
Naomi's going to work now.
But I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
So why do you need to know y equals x plus b?
Well, it's because it explains like the relation between different values. So really it is, it's how you understand B is basically like what is important there. So understanding what B is, that B is like your slope, then goes into like acceleration and velocity and position, and then a lot of other stuff with that kind of same situation. Also, there's a lot of like sensors where you have to understand slope and like assumption.